Hi, Rachel Asiali here with City to Shore Prestige Home Group, your local real estate agent. Going to go over the buying process with you today. We're also going to take a look at a full purchase agreement and we'll go over relationship documents if you decide to move forward with working with me. So let's get started, not wasting any more time. Let me share my screen. Alrighty. So here is the buying process in a little bit of a nutshell going on. Starting out is going to be selecting your real estate agent and getting pre-approved from a lender. It's very important for us to know how much money you actually are working with, what we're able to do as far as your options go. When it comes to finances, it's going to be very important for us to know what type of loan that we're going to be looking at to make sure the home qualifies for one of those loan programs. So touching base with a local lender is very important to me. Hopefully, I already got you connected with somebody that you're happy with and that we can move forward. So once you're able to get your pre-approval, then we start looking at houses. Usually looking from the Flex MLS or something you might have found on Zillow. Anything that is in Michigan is something that I can actually show you as I'm a licensed agent in Michigan. As we're looking at offers, this might be, sorry, as we're looking at homes, this might be an extended process for us. So you might be working with a lender to make sure you have the most updated W-2s turned into them and any additional paperwork that they might be requiring. Once we write an offer, we will be able to submit our offer to the listing agent and see if it's something that the seller is going to accept or not. If they don't, we're just going to be stuck in this little loop for a little bit. So if it's not accepted, we'll just go back to showing homes again. In this market, it has kind of been a crazy market for since COVID. The statistics is 1 out of 12 offers is actually accepted. My personal statistic is 1 out of 5 offers is accepted. Now, with a little bit of a market slowdown, things have kind of shifted, and it might lean more into the favor of getting things quicker accepted at this point. If our offer is accepted, we will be able to put our earnest money deposit, will be written out to Chicago Title. Earnest money deposit is just a deposit that gives us some skin in the game that simply states, I'm very interested in this house and we want to move forward here. The earnest money deposit actually does go towards a buyer's closing cost, which is awesome, and it is typically going to be about 1% of the value of a home. So if we're writing a $200,000 offer, we're looking at probably putting around $2,000 down as an earnest money deposit. Once we get an accepted offer, it's going to be that the earnest money deposit needs to be picked up by the buyer's agent or dropped off at Chicago Title within 24 hours typically. Obviously, if things are a little different or we need to do a mobile deposit, that is a-okay. We will work around it, but just know how things typically go. So once we get our earnest money deposit in, our file is going to get started with our transaction coordinator at City to Shore Prestige Home Group. Our transaction coordinator's name is Erica, and she's amazing. She'll be touching base with you all steps of the way. What she does is make sure that the lender, the title company, and the sell side are all communicating together, that we all have our paperwork in, and that you get all copies throughout of the way. Um, our transaction coordinator, we do have a fee for her. It is $375, and it also comes with cloud storage of all your information for as long as you own the property. Um, so that is only paid at close as well. So nothing out of pocket. If we don't make it to the closing table, you'll not have to pay a single thing out of pocket after that. Moving in from our accepted offer, it really goes bang, bang, bang. We have to get a lot of things done right away. And the next part is going into our inspection period. So we typically have a 10-day inspection window for us to have our inspections done. If we need anything to be estimated, so say we need to get a new roof or something we found with the foundation that we need to get estimates for, this is our 10-day window to get that done. If we find something that we want to negotiate on or get it repaired, those are our two options. We negotiate either on the price of the home or we negotiate that the seller pays for those fees, pays for the repair to be done before close. If the client and the seller cannot come to a terms of negotiations where both sides agree, then we get to get our earnest money deposit back at this point, and then go back to showing homes. But if there is nothing wrong with the house, we're all good to go. We'll be able to move on to the next round. Now, inspections are going to be the price of inspections are going to be paid for out of pocket before closing, typically ranging between $400 to $500, depending on the size of the house, and depends on all the types of inspections that you get. So, in an inspection, a few things that are normal is the typical home inspection that should last about 3 hours, really going into the home and searching it through with a fine-tooth comb. And there's also another inspection called radon, which is a natural form of gas that naturally occurs over time, but has been linked to causing lung cancer. So if you were to also get a radon test, that typically takes about 3 days, and it costs around $150. So just as a thing for you to be aware of, that is an option for you. So those all are all fees that will have to be paid for upfront. So say we made it through inspections, everything's great on the house, we're comfortable moving forward. We're then going to have an appraisal done. An appraisal is the bank saying what the true value of the home is. So we could say that the value of the home is all the way up here, but the bank is not going to lend anything more than they think the value of the home is. So with that all being said, appraisal is going to be a third-party person that goes through and says, this is what I think the true value of the home is. If we ended up offering $200,000 on a home and the bank says, I'm sorry, the home is only worth 180. Well, then what we have to do is either the seller has to come down in price or we have to come up with the cash to make up the difference. With all that being said, if no one's willing to budge on that, this is another step where we're able to back out, do a mutual release, get our earnest money deposit back, and go back to looking at houses. The appraisal is either paid for in your seller closing costs or upfront. It really depends on the institution that you go with. Most appraisals range between $400 to $600, just depending on what the lender's fees or requirements are. And again, you'll want to talk to them to see if it's going to be paid for upfront or in the closing costs. So let's say everything went perfect. Everything's as good as I expected it to be. And we got the house at exactly the asking price that we offered. And the appraisal says, yep, that's what the value of the house is. Then we are given the thumbs up. We get to go forward into underwriting. Underwriting is where someone goes through all of your files to check your debts, check your balances, make sure income and everything works through. They're going to look at every penny of every dollar that you make, just to make sure that nothing's hinky there, and just to make sure that this is not a loan that would default very easily. The underwriter is going to ask for a lot of paperwork, and it might be paperwork that you've already submitted. Please just bear with them and submit it again, is all I can say, is as the nicest way possible. They might have lost it, or they need something updated, or was missing something. It's easier for you to just resubmit it than it is to fight it, is what I found moving forward. If you are having a person help with gift funds, please be aware that they might also have to submit a 30-day bank statement and also be subject to this underwriting. So make sure you know all the people that are going to be involved in your transaction. If they're going to be financially contributing to you, you will probably have to have them share some of their personal information as well. Once underwriting has cleared you and said everything's good, everything's as great as we expected it to be, then we are given the clear to close. The clear to close says that we are all great. This is a perfect home for us and you can afford it. We then have a 3-day mandatory hold time, which is called the buyer's remorse clause. The buyer's remorse clause is 3 days in a window to make sure that no one pressured you to buy this house. And if you decide that you want to back out, at this point, after we're given the clear to close, this is the only time that you will really lose your earnest money deposit back. But if it helps you feel better in the house moving forward, that is perfectly fine. Just know that it is something that you'll have to forego because the seller took their house off the market specifically for you. So let's say we're given the clear to close. we schedule, we're super happy anyways, it doesn't even matter. Moving forward, this is the house for us. We make it to the closing table, and at this point, we're going to sign deeds, go over paperwork and the settlement statement. This is where you'll bring your cashier's check to the closing table, and I highly, highly recommend everything being done as a cashier's check, only to reduce fraud. I really prefer not doing any sort of wire fund transfers just because there's too much fraud out there, and people are very, very creative and tricky in these times. Now, once we get the closing documents signed, does not always mean that we get possession right away. So possession is something that we do talk about when we're writing our offer, whether you get possession at close, after 2 weeks, so the seller has time to move out, 30 days. It really just depends to the seller's situation. So reviewing all of this again, just really quick, we get our offer accepted, we submit an earnest money deposit, we get inspections, we get our appraisal, and then we're going to underwriting and get our clear to close and then sign our paperwork. So that is the boom, boom, bam of it all. For our earnest money deposit, we do want to make sure we have a personal check for that. So you can actually sign an earnest money deposit with a personal check. So keep that in mind. And please, I hope you're taking notes throughout here. If you have any questions about this process, just make sure you text me or call me and we can talk it over a little bit. So that is the whole buying workflow in a nutshell. And let's go on to the next stuff. Share. So another thing I like to kind of go over is actually where money comes into play and what you would be looking for as far as different loan types of options. So there are 4 different types of loans available to any given buyer. We have, or sorry, 3 different loans available and cash, of course. They have a few different requirements as far as down payments. So if you're a veteran or we're looking at something in a rural development area, this is eligible for a zero money down and no private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance is mortgage insurance if you own less than 20% of the value of your home and you might be a higher risk loan. It's just an insurance to make sure that the bank gets their money back as far as value for what they've already invested into you. FHA is a Fair Housing Administration loan. This is awesome because it allows you to do a 3.5% down and is a little more wiggle room on your debt to income ratio. They also allow you to have a little bit of a lower lower credit score to still allow someone the ability to purchase a home. This does come with the requirements as far as government funding goes. They require a few different guidelines to make sure the home is up to par with their health and safety factors. So there is a separate appraisal that is done at the same time for this fee. The appraisal is going to look at the state health and safety, so no flaking, peeling, cracking, splitting paint. They're going to make sure that there are fire detectors everywhere, GFI outlets, railings where they're supposed to be, and just overall making sure that the home is safe for you moving forward. This loan, however, does have lifetime PMI no matter what. So keeping that in mind, typically people start out with a FHA loan. After a few years, you have a great record showing that you're, building your credit, making on-time payments. And at that point, you might actually be able to refinance into a conventional loan and potentially drop off your PMI. So keep that in mind as something that you could do moving forward. As far as the most normal type of loan that you've ever heard of is going to be your conventional loan. That is your 30-year mortgage. That goes as low as 3%, 5%, 10%, or 15% down. Really open to what your debt to income ratio is to allow you to put that percentage down. Now, this one is great because once you hit 20% down, you no longer have the private mortgage insurance. So keeping that in mind as having something that's lower right now, you might be able to refinance once the value of your home has increased over time as well. And then, of course, we have the option of cash, which anybody can have the ability to do that. You would just need to provide proof of funds to the seller to show I actually have the money for it. Now, going into your closing costs, I always like to talk about this because, again, that earnest money deposit is going to be both the down payment and your closing costs together minus your earnest money deposit. So the earnest money deposit goes towards both things there. In the extra closing costs, just so you can see what we have there, you'll have that appraisal fee that we talked about. And I have that in red because, like I said, it might be something you have to pay for up front, or it might be something paid for in your closing costs. So it really varies between your lenders. Each lender is going to have their own fee. There will be a title closing fee. Our company currently uses the Chicago Title. Chicago Title is an awesome company that we have an awesome relationship with to make sure that we get our titles clear and that no one's great great grandson comes back through and says, I actually own this house. That closing fee is going to be $300 and also covered inside your closing costs. You will also have a title insurance policy to make sure there are no issues that might have occurred or errors that are in the deed transfers. This insurance type policy, there's a seller's policy and then there's a buyer's policy, and they vary based on the amount of house, so the purchase price of the home. Property tax proration. When we write up a purchase agreement, it is typically done as a calendar year proration. So we would pay from taxes from today until the end of the year. And the seller, if they already paid for their taxes, might get a credit and we might get a debit. It really just depends on the time of the year when we are actually paying for our taxes. And then we'll have a property tax escrow fund. So an estimate of what taxes would be for next year is already going to be taken care of within your monthly payment. So that's going to be a holding account that a part of your monthly payment will go into this holding account to pay for next year's taxes. We'll also have homeowners insurance from this time of the year to the end, as well as homeowners insurance put into escrow for those funds. Again, part of that will be taken from your monthly payment and put directly into that escrow account to pay for the future. There will be a deed recording fee. That deed recording fee is typically $30 with the county or the township. And then the broker fee, which is that broker admin fee that we talked about, which is $375. So in total, when you are making your monthly payments, we are looking at principal and interest, the PMI, if that's going to be applies to you or not, and then the funds that will go into escrow for your taxes and homeowners insurance. And that is everything there. And now let's go over a purchase agreement. This is the West Michigan Regional Purchase Agreement. This is the most interesting part of it all and the most important for you to know about along the way. So as we're writing up a purchase agreement, we'll have today's date, the multiple listing service number that the home is listed under. The selling office is actually the buyer's office, and then the listing office is the listing agent. This effective date is from today until moving forward. And agency disclosures to say how I'm representing you in writing this purchase agreement. So if I was the buyer's agent, I'm writing it as the buyer's agent right here, just to disclose to the seller that I have no relationship with them. I am not trying to help them. I am trying to help my buyer. So as the primary selling agent, my name is Rachel Asiala. My email is rachel@citytoshore.com, and my license number is 650-142-8544. We will be given a seller's disclosure statement that says what the age of the house is, what the age of things that are in the house, if it's working, if it's not working, if there were leaks in the roof, if there's ever water in the basement, things that the seller needs to disclose to you moving forward. It will be from the date that they ended up signing that, from moving forward to close. So if anything happens that was not disclosed into the information, or something happens while we're in the transaction, they will let us know and they have to fix it to what we agreed upon as the day of what the previous disclosure was. So let's say the roof all of a sudden starts leaking when they said there was no leaks beforehand, they will have to fix it before we close. Lead-based paint addendum. This addendum says that if the house was built before 1978, then we have to say that the house could have lead-based paint in it, and for us to be aware of that. Any homes built after 1978 no longer use lead-based paint, so that is not anything that we have to worry about. The property description, the buyers offer to pay, or sorry, offer to buy on in like the city of blank, county of blank, and our address goes right here. We'll have our legal description that'll go right into this area, and then the PP number is going to be your parcel number that is going to be for tax purposes. Moving past the unplatted lands, that gets a little more complicated, but that is usually if we have acres and acres of lands. And going on to the purchase price. Our purchase price is going to be whatever we determine based on our comps that we pulled and what we think is the correct price for what we offer for this house. Seller concessions is if you need any help with closing costs or buying down points for mortgages, or if you just want to have money back to have so you can buy furniture. This is where we ask for any seller concessions there. In our terms of how we're going to purchase the home is if we are going to use it cash, where we provide our proof of funds. If it's going to be a new mortgage, this is where we'd fill out what type of mortgage it would be. So FHA, conventional, VA, the rural development. This is where we would put that here. If it's going to be a 30 or 15-year mortgage, and how much of that house is going to be funded. So let's say I'm conventional loan, 30 years, and I'm going to do 5% down. That means 95% of the home is going to be funded with a mortgage. And then bearing interest rate not to exceed X number. In this market, it's kind of fluctuating as far as the interest rate goes. So we would want to say whether it's market value, or I wouldn't be able to afford this house if it hit this level in our interest rate. So it's something we would determine ahead of time. Depending on our type of financing, we might have to do repairs based on the type of loan. So this would say whether the buyer will agree to pay a certain amount of money towards those repairs, or if the seller would be required to pay a certain money towards those repairs, but not to go further. And that would allow us to get authorization with your lenders as well, to talk with them about financing and share the disclosures with those agents as well. Seller financing is going to be your land contracts, something I can absolutely do, but I would want to do this as a separate talk to you in the future if we want to go seller financing. And purchasing with equity is if you already owned a piece of property and you wanted to move that money over into the future to purchase the next home. Contingencies are if we have to sell a property to be able to afford this one. So if you do not currently own a property and you've been saving up, the sale is not contingent on the sale of the property. If we do have to sell a property but we haven't listed it yet, it would be contingent upon, or we have it listed but someone is buying it, so we're good. It's upon the closing, so it is already in the process, and we would just put what your address is there. And then we're interested in this property, we still need to get it ready to sell, so we are looking at contingent upon the sale and closing of your house. Typically for my first time home buyers, the sale is not contingent on the sale of a property. Moving on to section 10. Section 10 is going to say that anything that is bolted to the walls or affixed to the house comes with the house. This includes all your lights, all your flooring, cabinets, hardware, your curtains, curtain rods, blinds, shades, everything that's very important. Obviously, people had beef in the past, and this is now an issue. But we'll also reiterate on there things like a stove, the refrigerator, the dishwasher, the washer and the dryer. And sometimes the seller might say, hey, you can have everything, but it doesn't include the washer and the dryer, or it doesn't include the playset in the backyard, or something like that. Is something that they want to take with them. They will make note of that in the future, and it is something for us to negotiate as well. Heating and cooking fuels. Heating and cooking fuels is not not necessarily a thing for us to negotiate if we're looking at a house that's within the city. If we're looking at something that is on propane, though, a seller is required to leave the tank at least 10% full so that you have the ability to test everything out, make sure the house stays warm, and a lot gives you a little time to have some cooking fuels before you get it filled. Any exceptions to that are going to be noted as our exceptions there. However, if you're on natural gas, this is not anything that we have to worry about. Any assessments that is on the property. So if new sidewalk was put in by the city and they're having the seller pay for that, the seller must pay the entire balance moving up front, or have it at least where the next monthly payment would be up for you. This includes something like lamp posts as well. So lights, electrical for the lamp posts that might be outside your door or something like that. So we typically say that the seller shall pay the entire balance of any and all assessments that are due and payable on or before the day of closing. When we go into property taxes, we have three different options as far as no proration, calendar year proration, or fiscal year proration. The typical one that we do is the calendar year proration. So you will not pay for a time that the sellers, you'll start paying for your taxes for the time that you moved in and to the end of the year from there. And the seller will pay for the time that they were in for the year. And then you will assume the rest of the payments moving forward. Well, and septic, if you're on city water, city sewer, we do not have to worry about this. But if we're looking at something that's going out in the country, we will have to have the well and septic inspected and tested to make sure that it meets all health and safety factors. So this is going to be something that we have 10 days to do, whether we put it on the seller to pay for the pumping and inspections for everything, or if the buyer says that they will arrange for it. You're looking around a $500 to $600 fee, depending on what all is required at this point. With it all being said, it used to be something that typically the seller would take care of, but once we got hit a very high competitive market, it did help the sellers not have to worry about scheduling and doing all the stuff if the buyer said that they would just take it over. So it's something that it depends on the amount of competition that we have in this home, and if it's something that's required, what we would want to suggest for you to move forward as far as strategy goes there. But again, typically on the seller. For inspections, in the event that we're a VA financing, you will have to have a thorough termite inspection with a report for wood destroying insects. Now, it is something that is normally looked at typical inspections. It's just a separate report that's specifically for VA. Our inspection window, we get to determine how long that window will be. It is typically a 10-day, or if we can get it done shorter, it allows us to move forward with the process a little bit faster and allows the seller to have peace of mind that, okay, someone likes our house and we're moving forward. So with all that, here's where we're able to put how long we have for our inspection window. Again, typically 10 days is the normal, and if there was any ability to shorten it, I would suggest to do so just so that we can move forward. If you're wanting to waive your inspection rights, which is not something I will ever suggest to anybody, I will make sure that you'll have to sign your extra initials there. It is an option for you, but it is not anything that I would ever recommend because you never know what is going to be in even a brand new house. We will make sure that seller arranges to pay for all the certifications for occupancy, sidewalk compliance, smoke detectors, if those are all applicable, mostly things that are for new builds. Title insurance policy is required for new mortgage loans. It is not required for cash deals, though. So keeping that in mind. Property surveys, if you're wanting to get a survey done, typically has to be done within 10 days. That now price ranges upward into $600 to $1,000 at this point. Could be more, could be less, just depends on the amount of acreage that we're looking at. If we are looking at something that's in the city, it is nice for us to know that it's already been plotted and typically doesn't have further things for us to do unless you're wanting to build a fence, and that is a huge requirement for you to move forward with this property. That's where I would suggest a survey. Home protection plans. Home protection plans cover all the rest of the essentials in the home, not including homeowners insurance. This is a little bit different. It talks about your appliances, your HVAC system, your AC unit, the washer, the dryer, the refrigerator, the oven, the dishwasher. These all policies just vary between the different companies that you can use. Um, a home protection plan is good to say that if something's old in the house, that we would want the seller to pay for a home protection plan as an option. Or if everything is new, we could say that, hey, we're going to pay for our own, it's okay. Or we can just leave it blank and no one has to pay for anything in the future on there. If we are buying a home that has rents or an association and we're closing mid-month, all of those will be prorated. So you will receive the rent from the rent if you're buying an investment property, or if this is on an HOA, then the HOA will be prorated for that month, and then you will take over moving forward. This is where we'll say the date of the closing. So typically within 30 days of the day that we write our offer is where we would say what our closing date would be. A pre-closing walkthrough. We can reserve the right to walk through one more time before we actually put pen to paper and say this house is ours, just to make sure that everything is exactly as it should be. Or we could waive that right and say, I trust the seller. It looks like they're clean, and they're gonna still be living there for another 30 days possession, um, or something like that. We're not gonna bug them. It's up to you on what you prefer to do. As far as possession goes, we can say that we can get possession at the close of sale, or if a seller needs extra time to live within that property so that they have time to move, we could say at 10 a.m. on the 31st day if they're giving 30 days to close there. If they need longer and you want to make sure that you get some money for them renting from you, say that they need 60 days possession and you want $1,000 a month until they actually move out, they could write that here if you needed to do that. However, if we say we give them 30 days possession and they don't move out, what happens? Well, if the seller fails to deliver possession to the buyer on the agreed upon date, then the seller must give is seen as a tenant in sufferance now, and they must pay the buyer a fee of $500 a day until they're able to move out. And so we're just trying to make this a very expensive hotel that encourages them to get out and make sure we get our possession the time that we set it. When the seller if they are to occupy the property after close, they are to pay all utilities during their occupancy, but the buyer has to maintain the structure and mechanicals of the home. So you're almost a landlord for that time frame. You will also have to pay homeowners insurance during that time. However, any repairs or replacements necessary by the seller's misuse, abuse, or neglect of any portion of the property is on to the seller for their responsibility and expense. So if they put a hole in the wall, they must repair it. So keeping that in mind. And then once we get the keys on the day that we said that we're going to, the seller must deliver the property trash free, debris free, and in broom clean condition. So it will be nice and cleaned out for you just to move in. Moving forward, this is where our earnest money deposit that we talked about comes into play. So we get to set a deadline to them to have to respond back to us. So if we submit an offer, then we can say, I'm going to say that you need to give me an answer by this time tomorrow, or else this is no longer a valid offer. Kind of puts the pressure for the seller to hurry up and make a decision so it doesn't continue to be drawn out and they can't just keep on waiting for a better offer to come through. This is where we'll say how much money our earnest money deposit will be. Like I said, it's typically 1% of the value of the home that we are looking at purchasing. However, we could make our offer stronger, saying, I'm really interested. I want to do 5% of what this home value is, or I want to do X amount of money. All the money still applies towards your closing costs. So that's the benefit ultimately. Um, and it just shows that you're really interested in the home. All of our earnest money deposits are made out to Chicago Title so that they can hold it in their escrow account as a third party that has no association to favoring one side or the other. This whole agreement is made is going to be provided by my broker and filled out by myself. However, if you need any additional advice as far as tax, legal tax, environmentals, situations, and then needing a state lawyer or anything like that, I'm going to have to refer to a professional. So as to say that I'm here to help with the purchase of the property and make sure we have all the finances lined up, and to make sure all of our paperwork is filled out correctly. But if it goes outside of that scope of things, we might have to defer to a professional if you have further questions. All the disclosure terms and here information, additional information that I receive on the multiple listing services, such as the seller's disclosures, anything else that was seen as confidential that I might have received on this property, is something that I must disclose to you. Any other provisions, we just make sure we write in here one more time that we have that broker administration fee of $375. Mergers and integrations, as we go through, we might say purchase furniture from the seller, or do additional addendums, such as repair addendums or appraisal addendums. Anything of that is added as an addendum and is merged into the full agreement. We do electronic signatures, which are seen as real signatures. So it is going to be attached and associated with your email account. So those are seen as legal and binding. And please be aware of wire fraud is a huge thing, and it's a huge issue that we have in the real estate community. Therefore, I would make sure we do everything strictly as the cashier's check for closing costs. And if there's anything that seems a little funky, please take a screenshot and send it to me before you sign anything. Click a link that you're not familiar with or anything from there. This is where we will sign acknowledging this is what the agreement that we want to do, and the seller has the ability to respond as written. They accept everything the way that we accepted the terms, or as written, except maybe they want some more money, maybe they want to keep something that we asked for, maybe they want longer possession than what we were giving them. So with all that being said, that is the full purchase agreement. And let's pause this. And that is a purchase agreement in a nutshell. If the seller does counter offer, we would have to go back through and say that we understand what their counter is. Whether we accept it or we don't is up to us on final signatures there. Again, if you have any questions on this, I hope you're taking notes, so that you can ask me questions or text me, call me with anything. And then we'll move on to what a relationship on legal paperwork would look like with me. So here is all the paperwork that would move forward as far as allowing me to help you purchase the home. So a disclosure regarding agency or real estate agency relationships shows you how I am representing someone on either side of the transaction, whether I was the seller's agent, the buyer's agent, or working in dual agency. In this transaction, I'd be working as a buyer's agent, which means that I am solely acting on behalf of the buyer. So I'm here to make sure that your best interest is looked out for the whole time, and make sure that everything that I do is on behalf of you. A seller's agent works solely on behalf of the seller, so trying to get the seller the most money possible, as a buyer's agent would be trying to get the house as cheap as possible in the best terms for the buyer. Dual agency is when a real estate agent represents for both sides, both the seller and the buyer. That one comes with a little more liability, and not something that I typically enter into. So designating the agency here is to show again that I'd be representing as a buyer's agent or a sub-agent to help you purchase a home. I would sign here and you would sign down here. This addendum of agency regarding contract is I work for a brokerage. My broker's name is Amanda Volkiers. She is my big mama jamma boss mama. She is the person that looks over all of my paperwork as I review, because I do have a boss to make sure that if anything happens that needs to be mediated or somebody has to step in, she would step in for us. So this is to say that I work for City to Shore Prestige Home Group, and I would be the designated person to help move forward in purchasing the home. And if anything was to happen, or let's say I go get COVID or go into early labor, Amanda is able to step up and negotiate on your behalf. And this is where we would accept moving forward with that. This is the only thing that would be considered a real contract moving forward between us. So this is whole purpose is for us to buy and sell real estate, engaging in and purchasing real estate. A typical terms as far as making sure that I can represent you for, is typically up to 6 months, but can be adjusted down if you would like. 6 months just makes sure that I'm able to help you with the purchase, or if we don't win this home, that I have more time moving forward as well. In compensation, I am to receive 3% of the purchase price of the home. As I previously talked about in houses, the seller is the person that pays for the compensation, and the buyer's agent or the listing agent typically splits that with the buyer's agent. So that is normally at 3%. And if the seller is not willing to pay for that, it is typical for a buyer to be able to come up with that difference. We could also ask for that in the seller concessions if that is something that they don't want to move forward with. However, it is not a situation that you have to worry about. That is normal, and I will let you know it's a per case basis if this was to happen. If I was to show you a property and later you decide that you didn't want to purchase it, and then later you come back after, say, 4 months and it's still on the market, but you want to use another agent, this is if you were to have signed this. This is to say that I would still be owed commission, be owed compensation because I was the procuring cause that showed you the property first. We're also again one more time saying that we agree for the admin fee of the 375. One person one time complained about it like they didn't know about the fee, so you're going to hear it on everything. That fee again is paid for only at close if we make it to the closing table. My contract says that this whole agreement is confidential. Everything that you tell me is confidential. All the personal information, financial information is to remain confidential and will not be shared with anybody, including the listing side or anybody within my office. If there is any conflict of interest where you're going to be going to a property that maybe is listed within my office, I will let you know up front. If there's anything that you need to be aware of that might be considered a conflict of interest, or if you're checking out a listing that I am personally listed, I'll have to let you know right away, just so you know there might be a little bit of a conflict. This is why I have a lot of team members within my office to help out. For non-discrimination, our office does not discriminate against race, sex, disability, familial status, marital status, height, weight, or anything. With all this being said, as far as non-discrimination, I can also not steer you one way or another as far as school districts or areas, or um, whether the area is a high crime or low crime area. So these are things that you'll have to be responsible to make sure that you do a lot of research on. I cannot say what is a good home and a bad home, which is also to say that I cannot tell you, no, you shouldn't go look at this property because it's not in a safe area. Unfortunately, if you request to see a home, I will be showing you that house just because I want to make sure that you get to see everything that you want to see. Indemnification is to say that I um, that the client shall indemnify, defend, and hold the broker and the agents harmless of any losses, liabilities, claims, damages, costs, including attorney fees, arising from the client's breach of agreement arising or showing the properties to a client. This is to say, as I am working as a realtor, I am not a tax accountant, I'm not a lawyer, I am not a lot of things here. If there is any other issues that come along with the property because we didn't do our due diligence, this is where we will have to come up with the this is where we are held harmless from that. This entire agreement is an agreement with us, whether it was said orally or written. If I was to write a purchase agreement for you, this is to say that you're verbally agreeing if you never signed this moving forward. So this is the only thing that is seen as legal and binding for us to say to have um, a relationship moving forward, and this would be signed when we would put in a purchase agreement together. Um, Again, like I said, the compensation part is really a case by case basis, and in our situation right now, currently, is not an issue for us. The only other part here that we always like to flag is scams and spam is just huge and prevalent in the real estate industry. Please, 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 if anything looks fishy, before you click on a link, please take a screenshot of it and send it to me so I can say whether this was sent by somebody from Chicago Title, by my office, or by your lender, or if this is sent by a complete scam artist. We will want to be aware of that before moving forward. So please just be vigilant, protect your money, and immediately call the bank if you find anything that's an issue with any of that. So that is that is everything for me, everything that you would have to worry about in real estate. And please let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. I'm here for you and would love to help you purchase your first house. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.